Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Matthew Darius. I'm the Professional Development Coordinator here at New York ASBO. I'll be moderating today's webinar. Just to get a few housekeeping items out of the way, we encourage you to ask questions at any time, and we mean any time. There's two different methods you can go about to do that. You can use the chat window on your GoToWebinar control panel. I want to be able to see that, so if your question isn't for public consumption, we encourage you to use the question and answer screen. It's a threaded messaging app, so we're better able to keep track of your questions. That is also located on your GoToWebinar control panel. Simply type your question in there, and if it's something having to do with the webinar or the system, I can answer that for you. And if it's for our presenter, I'll go ahead and get that answered for you as well. With that out of the way, I'm going to turn the call over to Deborah Cunningham.
Thank you, Matt. This is Deborah Cunningham. I'm Director of Education and Research for the New York State Association of School Business Officials, and it's a pleasure for me to introduce our webinar speaker today, Carl Thurnow. He is going to give us an update of the State Education Department's Office of Facilities Planning. Carl Thurnow has over 25 years of experience in public sector contracting and about 20 years in the New York State Education Department. He is currently Director of the Office of Facilities Planning. The primary responsibility of the office is the health and safety of all New York State students and staff attending public schools. He accomplishes this task with a staff of architects, engineers, project managers, and support staff. His office is the authority having jurisdiction for all code compliance in public schools outside New York City, and he and his staff review, approve, and issue building permits for over 2,000 capital construction projects each year with a value of approximately $2 billion. In addition, he issues certificates of occupancy and the new fire safety system that has been put up. So we are looking forward to this update. We want to hear about the status of the backlog and efforts to reduce it, smart school buybacks, what's going on there, what kinds of trends are happening, and tell us a little bit about the online fire safety inspection process as well. So with that, let me turn it over to Carl. Carl, thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Pleasure to be here. So we'll get started right away on the backlog. Oops, here we go. Regarding the backlog, I'll get into that in just a second, but where we are with our current staffing, as many of you may know, we were provided an additional $800,000 in the state budget last year specifically for facilities planning to try and help with the backlog. We have used that in a combination of ways, as I'll discuss shortly, but we have been able to get some additional staff, and we are recruiting for multiple additional staff beyond what we currently have. So on your screen, you'll see that the new folks are in red. We have 3 existing architects and a new architect, Mr. William Perrott. I apologize, there's no S on his name, so I better get rid of that before he finds out. Engineers, we have Chris Motil. It joined us recently. And health and safety, as many of you know, Laura Sarr retired, so we are looking to replace Laura's position. And final cost reports, we have 2 new folks, Jamie Byron and Rong Zan. And support staff, Anthony Gent is my new administrative assistant, which is terrific. It's already making a big difference in my life, and something that I've been living without for about 5 years, so that's been a godsend. Other than that, we have recently promoted Debbie Johnson. She'll be a supervising project manager. And Mary Sansarique, unfortunately, has gone back to transportation, but she's filling in double duty with facilities until we get a permanent replacement. In addition to Mary's replacement, I'm looking to backfill Debbie's project management position as well, and then in addition to that, 1 to 2 more project managers. In addition to the 4 architects I now have, I'm trying to get 2 more, which would be 6. In addition to our 4 engineers, we're trying to double that to 8 engineers, which of course is historically where the backlog lies.
So, Carl, we do have a question. So, is Mary Sansaric is a district's project manager? You will continue to work with her until a new project manager is appointed. Is that right?
That is correct. Mary will continue all of her facilities planning duties during the time that she's also working in transportation, and therefore all her clients, so to speak, should continue to deal with her in the normal fashion until such time as we identify a new project manager and send that notification out for all of the districts that currently have Mary as a project manager. On a project review basis, we have been successful in hiring 9 private engineering firms to assist with the backlog. We have hired several firms particularly for energy performance contracts, and then several firms for, quote, normal projects. We've currently sent out almost 200 projects for consultant review. And the backlog has therefore dropped from 660 projects on January 1st to about 520 projects today. We expect that to continue. As you can see, our backlog was 42 weeks, and honestly, it was probably in the neighborhood of 46. But based on January 1st, it's gone from 42 to 32 weeks today. We do expect it to continue dropping as we get our new staff up to speed and as we continue to use these 9 firms to help with the engineering backlog in particular.
So, Carl, will school districts actually interact with these engineering firms? What is their role? Are they doing like a preliminary review, or?
No, the actual process is that a project will continue through its normal process through the project manager and through the architect, and then when those are approved, we will, as necessary, send it out to the private firms for the engineering review. So if an private engineer, has a question that might be due to the school district, they could certainly make that contact, but generally speaking, they're going to be dealing with the school district's consulting engineering, architectural and engineering firm. They are actually performing the code review on behalf of state education, as we would do, but we simply don't have the resources at this point in time based on the number of projects that we have. So the consultant firms that state ed has hired to review the consultant work for the school district, they'll deal directly with each other in most cases, get their questions answered by the district consultants, and then when they are satisfied, they simply are sending all of the information back to my office with a certification saying that they have reviewed the project in accordance with the code. And then at that point, obviously it remains the commissioner's responsibility to issue the building permits because we're the authority having jurisdiction, and we will issue the building permits at that point. If the architect or consulting engineer raises certain things that they weren't able to resolve, then we'll get in the middle of that and figure out how to resolve it and move forward. But in most cases, the projects will be approved as soon as they're returned to state education.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. We were also excited to see that the $800,000 was included in the governor's current budget proposal, so we're hoping that this is going to become an annual appropriation. Interestingly enough, the only reason that I've had the funding to hire the consulting firms is because we were not able to hire all of the staff that we had hoped to. As I noted, we only have 1 new architect and 1 new engineer. We're trying to get 2 more architects and 4 more engineers, and that has been a struggle simply because we are not currently paying a competitive salary. The 2 people that I was able to acquire were already state employees coming from different agencies, but it appears that I've exhausted that supply. We are working with our internal HR office, and we're working with civil service to try and upgrade the positions and therefore the salary, and I do expect that if we're successful there, we will be able to fill those positions without difficulty. If we do continue to experience that difficulty, then I think it's going to be critical to continue working with these private engineering firms to assist with our backlog. In addition to that, we're in the process of hiring one of our recently retired engineers. Certainly, we have the ability to do electronic plans and specifications, and since that individual retired to Georgia, that system will be available to him without having to come back to Albany. So that's where we are on the reviews of projects, and we are also trying to expedite as much of the simple stuff as possible. We have Fast Fridays. Everybody, as you might imagine, in your line of work as well, you might get a little burned out by Friday. So we have level ones, which are the easier projects, any hazardous materials, seasonally critical projects like roofs or boilers or something like that. Certainly emergencies are going to get expedited. And also we have trained our architects to look at small, simple, relatively simple engineering things and less than the $100,000 projects and so forth. So as always, the better the submission, the shorter the backlog, because one terrible project has a significant ripple effect. You'll also note that because of the architects doing so many other things based on the engineering backlog, the architect's backlog has crept up a little bit to the 18-20 week period, but we'll monitor that as well and make sure that we're able to keep on top of that.
Carl, we do have a question about the $100,000 capital outlay project.
Okay.
How long would it take to get them approved if it doesn't include mechanicals, such as masonry, patching, and site work only?
Yeah, again, the architect-only backlog is about 18 weeks now, but it's just gotten to that level within the last 2 weeks. So prior to that, the architects were at 10 or 12 weeks or so. So if there's something outstanding that we've missed, by all means, let us know. But the architectural backlog has historically not been the issue. So I hope that answers the question. On the Smart Schools Bond Act, of course, I think everyone's familiar by now that there are 4 types of acceptable project categories: school and community connectivity, modular, transportable, portable, whatever they may be known as, the removal of those, and pre-K construction. And just a finer point, we won't allow you to replace modulars with new modulars. If you were going to replace modulars and then do pre-K construction, for example, we wouldn't allow you to replace those modulars with new modulars. It would have to be permanent construction. And all projects must be included in your Smart Schools investment plan, which I think most districts are working on now. So the intent of the Bond Act, I think, originally was to provide districts with an opportunity to install technology and high-tech security features. We're breaking out the facilities planning process so that we have a standard review for those capital-intensive projects. It says security, and that should be all projects, capital-intensive projects. And then we are doing a streamlined review for certain types of things as well. The streamlined review on the technology and security side would be anything that, for example, in the SAFE Act, door hardening, front entrance security, window film, replacement of door frames and side lights, those kinds of things. And for the technology, the streamline would be replacing or upgrading existing wireless access points, existing server equipment, those kinds of things. Whenever you get into replacing or rather expanding systems or adding cameras or wireless access points of any of those types of things, we are going to try and streamline those types of projects as well because they are fairly simple, but that is not the actual streamlined review. Those are limited to those where you do not have expanded systems because we have to concern ourselves with the type of wiring, whether it's in an air plenum, whether it's passing through fire-rated walls and the fire stopping and all those kinds of code issues that go along with it. But many districts seem to be using their monies to replace current outdated equipment, and the wiring itself may be fine in many cases. But if you have questions, by all means talk to your project manager, even if you do to replace wiring and so forth. If those wires are already in conduit and the conduit's through firewalls, for example, and the firewalls are properly fire stopped, then that is likely something that we could help expedite for you, as opposed to making it sit through a standard review. So you must submit to facilities planning to get your project numbers, and we have developed a Smart Schools letter of intent. So we want you to send us the letter of intent, describe the different types of projects that you're doing, and then we'll give you project numbers that you can turn around and put into your Smart Schools Investment Plan, submit that through the Management Services Office, and ultimately get approval on your Smart Schools Investment Plan. Streamlined review, I mentioned this a little moment ago. Electronic things, intercoms, electronic door unlatching, cameras, interface with building management, central lockdown buttons. Those are the types of things that districts are considering for security, streamlined security, and then the door hardening things I mentioned as well.
Carl,
so the letter of intent. Yes.
I have
Go
a
ahead.
couple questions. Has facilities planning begun reviewing some of these Smart Schools Bond Act project proposals? And if so, what are the kinds of problems you're seeing or the reasons to deny or to ask the district to correct things? And then secondly, has a date been set for the quarterly Smart Schools Bond Act Review Board to convene?
Okay. The good news is that yes, we have started reviewing the facilities portions of Smart Schools investment plans, and the better news is that we have very little problems encountered so far. The way that we have set this up is we did not expect significant problems at this particular stage because you've already gone through a conversation with your project manager and or your letter of intent to establish the type of work you're going to do, and you've already obtained your project numbers, which you then turned around and submitted back to the department through the Smart Schools Investment Plan. So our review of the investment plan, our facilities planning review, keep in mind that the investment plan may require review from multiple offices, Office for Technology and things of that nature. So the fact that you've already come to facilities planning and gotten your project numbers, our review is fairly basic in that, yes, the work that's discussed and included in the investment plan does match and uses the appropriate project numbers that we previously issued to the district. So the only problem is going to crop up when our staff see a project for ABC, and we give you a project number for that, and then when you submit the investment plan, for some reason the whole project has changed and it's now XYZ, and you didn't come back and talk to the project manager. Those are the kinds of things that we'll have issue with, but provided you return the same information we already provided and you already shared with us, then your investment plan will get approved from the facilities planning perspective. Regarding the timeline, to my knowledge, the first quarterly meeting of the Smart Schools Review Board has not been set. I don't have a time frame for that, but I do understand they're trying to actively schedule that now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So the letter of intent, the first page is similar letter of intent stuff. I apologize, this appears to be squished down somewhat, so maybe hard to read, but this is simply a Smart Schools Bond Act letter of intent form. That's the first page, which you typically see on your letter of intent. The next page can be used for multiple buildings. If you are doing a district-wide Smart Schools project, for example, district-wide technology or district-wide security. Going to the third page is where we hit the meat of the problems. Smart Schools Bond Act at the top, said building permit, SED building permit not required, and you're submitting that information to us, and it's basically a notification only, no project number would be required. Community connectivity and a classroom learning technology project. So you're acquiring learning technology, or you're wiring up the the town hall or the community center, et cetera, where SED does not have code enforcement jurisdiction. Those permits and any work there would need to be done in cooperation with local authorities. Then we come into the second section, that building permit is not required and it's eligible for a streamlined review. Those are some of the things that we just talked about, your main entrance security systems, your control systems, video surveillance, and so forth, and a school connectivity project, equipment only. And you will see down as we get to the third section, building permit is required. So 3A and 3B have a component both for streamlined or for a building permit, depending on the extent of the work that you're doing. So again, 3A, the high-tech security, if that's all in similar conformance to the New York Safe Act that we did previously, then those kinds of things will not be require a building permit. You will need your architect certification as you did in the Safe Act, but you should maintain that locally in your files. So under the building permit required 3B and 4B, the high-tech security features that do require a permit are things that expand existing systems, run cabling, run new equipment, and so forth. We'll have to look at that for code compliance. And then 4B is the connectivity project. Same thing. You're installing additional systems where they did not previously exist. You're expanding wireless access points. Obviously, wireless access is only wireless from the wireless access point to the device. You still have to run cabling to the wireless access transmitter. So those kinds of things are more extensive than just replacing existing equipment, and therefore will need a review. We hope to be able to streamline these types of reviews as well, because many of them can be fairly straightforward, but we'll have to make that decision after we get a look at the project. And then, of course, replacement of classroom trailers and the pre-kindergarten programs are regular full-blown construction projects. And then we did add a fourth page for the Smart Bond LOI, and that's where we just want detail so that we can help determine how the project should track, whether it's eligible for streamlined review. That would be important information for your folks as well, as far as planning and estimating time of being able to get to work. So the categories are fairly self-explanatory. We just want your Smart Bond category down the first column, the detailed description of that type of work, and again, the more detailed you can tell us, even if you're expanding, but the conduit already exists from a previous project, that would be important for us to know, that we wouldn't have to worry about running those wires because you're going to use existing conduit, for example. And then we want to know, of course, how much of your Smart Bond allocation you are devoting to any particular category of work. And that's going to be important for state education to be able to report those figures at some point in the future.
Carl, do you have a sense,
yep.
Based on what you've reviewed so far, as to how many school districts are just buying devices versus doing actual capital construction?
Yes, our experience thus far is basically what we anticipated. There are relatively few districts buying devices, and that makes sense simply because this is a one-time funding source, and if you do not have a recurring revenue, or if you have not created a recurring revenue or set monies aside in your existing financial process or budgeting process, then you won't have the money to replace the technology devices that you're buying with Smart Bond money. So most districts do not seem to be using it for direct acquisition of devices. Most districts seem to be improving their infrastructure, their backbone, their fiber, their wireless capability, so that in the future they can connect the various devices to it as time and monies allow.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on Smart Bond before we move on to something else?
Well, we seem to be good.
All right. So as Deborah mentioned briefly, we do have a new fire inspection report and certificate of occupancy process that is available on our website. Bottom line is we're getting out of the business of mailing paper back and forth certificates of occupancy. Those familiar with the process, we already eliminated the mailing of all the booklets. We provide that on our website, and the district now downloads that booklet for each building needed. In the future, and it's it started in July of 2015, and as the state education department surveys or requires districts to survey their facilities, we do about 1/12 of the state every month for fire inspections and certificates of occupancy, and therefore it will take about a year for all districts to come on to the new system. So there's three components to the new system. First, annual building verification and certification by the superintendent. So this can be done at any time. We all know and laugh about the, quote, discovered building out there. Oh my goodness, we came to school this morning and there's a new building sitting there. We don't have any idea how it got there. The key is that districts assume a significant risk if they don't legalize that building and get it on the fire safety system. So we want you to go through your facilities and identify every building that we don't have a record of on our system, and then you can verify and certify those buildings. Question?
I have a question from Margaret. She wants to know what happens if the district lists more scope on the LOI than they actually complete.
That shouldn't be a problem. You identified to us a certain amount of work that was going to be done under a certain category of the Smart Bond LOI, and then at some point in time things changed, the prices came in higher than expected, so you had to cut back on certain types of work. All that would be done through the record keeping and amendment process that will be necessary to close out your Smart Bond accounts. Once you know final prices, if they're significantly different than the estimates that you give us up front, certainly we're going to ask that you go back into the portal and amend your Smart Schools investment plan to finalize those numbers. Does that answer the question?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so back to the fire safety. We want you to go in and verify all your buildings. We have pre-populated all of the district accounts with the buildings that we are aware of. So for example, if you have a new concession stand at the high school that we don't know about, it won't show up on the pre-populated list. You should be able to verify all the other buildings in my example, but when it comes to that concession stand, you'd say new building, and the system will put that in a parking lot off to the side, so to speak, and send my staff an email that, oh, we have a district here that's just identifying a new building that the system is not aware of. So then our staff can review that information, contact you, discuss the appropriate paperwork that needs to be provided so that we can get that building, quote, legalized and on the system, and then at the appropriate time when the district's cycle comes up, you can do your fire inspection, including that new building for the concession stand, and then ultimately when you've passed all your fire inspections, you can then print all your own certificates of occupancy. The fire inspection itself does not change at all. You still hire your fire inspector in the same way that you have previously, and the only difference becomes, instead of that individual mailing paper to us and we returning the certificate of occupancy, you will enter the portal, enter all the inspection data, and the system will calculate whether you're entitled to an annual CO, whether you've got a few violations and therefore you're only going to get a 30-day temporary, and worst case scenario, of course, that you failed the inspection and you won't get any certificate of occupancy. Obviously, that's not a situation we would expect many districts to actually enter data. If you know you failed, then you would take measures to correct those failures, to re-inspect, and then submit the information to us in order to obtain a CO. There is really no point in submitting data that proves you failed and then can't print a CO. So we would expect a realization to occur at the local level that, okay, we got to make these corrections, and then we can submit the data. This is just another pictorial of the system. The first column is the various steps in the annual building verification certification process, and then this next step is it gets imported into the State Education Department reference file, and then finally you can go ahead and do your annual fire inspection. The best example I have of why it is so important to discover all of those buildings, and again, this is an annual requirement now, is because you accept significant liability. In the worst case scenario, we have a district came to us for a building permit on a press box for their football field. It was being built by volunteers, including a volunteer architect who provided the documents. There were significant code compliance issues with the design, and we did not approve it, and we sent the district back a long list of things that needed to be corrected before we could issue the permit. Those corrections never came, and a permit was never issued. At some point in time, I did get a call from the attorney representing the volunteer who fell off the roof and broke his back while building an unpermitted structure on school property. And basically, I made an inquiry and conversation to the superintendent and said, look, you've got a huge issue here. There's no way that you're not responsible. And the bottom line is the individual that was injured, his attorney contacted us asking for the building permit, which obviously does not exist. And therefore, I'm just warning you, it's time to get your checkbook out. You will be responsible for that individual and the accident that occurred. The individual could not have been injured on an unpermitted project if the district had in fact gone through the process and gotten a building permit. All right, next topic, emergency compliance with carbon monoxide. As I think most districts are probably aware by now, emergency carbon monoxide regulations were put in place in 2015, and it was as a result of 2 fatalities in Long Island. All commercial buildings have to now have carbon monoxide within 1 year, and that's June 27th, I think, 2016 is the compliance deadline. School districts, or school facilities rather, were included in the definition of commercial buildings, and therefore every school district has to have carbon monoxide in detection in place by June of this 2016 year. I have provided significant information to all your directors of facilities. We've held additional webinars with the facilities directors. We've gone out and met school districts. We've gone to Long Island and Westchester. We've gone out in the western part of the state. We've had a meeting here in Albany, and as I mentioned, we've done a statewide webinar that is available on the School Facilities Association website if your director of facilities has not seen it or needs some additional information. The bottom line is there are certain specific cases where carbon monoxide detection is required. Every classroom which has a source, it could be home economics, or these days I guess it's family and consumer science, and science labs with a gas outlet for your Bunsen burner, a gas-fired rooftop unit that serves classrooms or other spaces through your HVAC system, your kitchens, your boiler rooms, etc. Of course, you must burn fuel in order to create carbon monoxide. So, for example, if you happen to be one of those rare buildings with incredibly inexpensive electric costs and therefore you have electric heat, hopefully you don't have significant carbon monoxide issues to worry about. Again, only the Bunsen burners perhaps. But everybody else typically has a significant amount of need for carbon monoxide detection. Bottom line, every classroom with a source has to have detection, and every other non-classroom zone, such as your kitchen, such as your boiler room, also requires detection. And in some cases, you need to link detectors together. So, for example, if there's a detector in the boiler room, it would need to be tied to a detector outside of the boiler room to warn other occupants of the building. And on your HVAC systems, you have 2 choices. You can provide a detector in the very first space served by the ductwork from the HVAC gas-fired unit, or you could you could put a detector in every space served by the system. In the former case, you put one in the first space and then one outside in the corridor or main office area that could be used to notify everyone else. The second method is to put one in every space served by the HVAC unit. This gets fairly complicated. I don't expect anyone to particularly become an expert through this webinar, but by all means, if you have any questions or your directors of facilities have questions, please talk to us and we'll help in any way we can to make sure that you are in compliance by June of 2006, end of June 2016. Another new emergency regulation was cooling towers. This is as a result of Legionnaire's disease, Legionella bacteria and Legionnaire's in New York City. Cooling towers are very large open air structures that allow cooling water to trickle over filters and decrease temperature and then be reused again. So they're open systems, and if they're not properly cleaned and disinfected, they can develop Legionella bacteria. which is what ultimately led to Legionnaire's disease, or the naming of Legionnaire's disease. And they're, again, very large central systems. There's not a tremendous amount of school districts that do have cooling towers, but those that do need to be aware of them, need to be in compliance with new Department of Health regulations. And in addition to that, you will now be subject to new inspections every 90 days. All cooling towers must be registered with DOH, inspected every 90 days, must comply with the new requirements by November 1st, and then annually by November 1st of every year. Those inspections have to be performed by licensed professionals or certified industrial hygienists or certified water technologists or an environmental consultant with training and experience that complies with specific industry standards. We have, as I say, some public school district cooling towers in New York State, and of those that have been tested, there have been several that tested positive for Legionella bacteria. So it is an important issue, important safety issue, and if you have a cooling tower, please be aware of these regulations and get your facilities folks to make sure that you're in compliance with these new Department of Health regulations. We can help, and here's more information that should be directed to the Department of Health. The Building Conditions Survey, of course, this was the fourth running. So we certainly have some experience at it now, and hopefully districts are taking advantage of it to its maximum potential, because we do believe that it is a unique opportunity. I'm involved in school facilities on a national level, and when I go to meetings and talk about the fact that in our case in New York, we provide you funding to help you determine what's wrong with your facility so that we can turn around and provide you more funding to help fix those things that are identified. And that's a unique thing that I've discovered in the nation. There's no other state that I'm aware of that provides that funding for the research necessary to prioritize your need. So we want you to have a team of licensed architects and engineers. We want you to survey all normally occupied structures. And of course, that had to be done by November 15th of 2015. The statute says data submitted to state ed by January 15th, 2016. And as I've had to do every other time, we extended the deadline to June 30th, 2016, simply because facilities planning is not the highest priority within the department for access to IT resources. You might be aware of things like Common Core and testing and teacher evaluations and all those other things that seem to be in the headlines, and that's fine. I don't think facilities planning needs to be in the headlines for dissatisfaction, let's say. So bottom line is, because of those issues, we struggle to get IT resources, and when we do, that causes us to have to extend the deadline. So I don't think that hurts anybody per se, but please just be aware that you do have until June 30th, 2016 to submit all your data on your building conditions surveys to state education and therefore be eligible for funding. You won't be able to submit.
I understand with this submission it will actually go through the portal for the first time. That
is correct.
Is there some streamlining benefit to school districts by having it be on the portal?
I'm not sure if that's accurate, to be honest. We're hearing a few complaints because, of course, in the past, your architects and engineers of record were able to submit the data on your behalf. That is still possible, but that means that the district would have to give them access to the portal specifically for the building conditions survey. Obviously, the architect engineer wouldn't have access to other district functions that are included on the portal, but that is another step that has to be made. It does streamline it from our perspective, so to speak, because the portal allows that data to be analyzed in a very easy manner, which we had not had in the past. So we're hoping it's going to be better for us for an analysis and reporting. I don't think it's necessarily more complicated for the district, but it is another step. If you choose to have your architect submit the data, you will have to set them up with rights to access the BCS on the portal.
Great.
This time around, the reimbursement rate is 29 cents a square foot, which is really significant in my view. That allows you to do all kinds of things to determine the status of a building system. And I think we're very open and generous about what you might do if you occasionally have storm line backups or sewage line backups. You know, you can run a camera down there, see where the break is, see where the crack is. Maybe there's a sag in the pipe. Maybe there's a clog somewhere. You know, you can identify that. That camera is a legitimate building condition survey cost. You are determining the condition of that underground construction. If you need to do a generator load test to see if the generator is capable of withstanding the demands of emergency needs for the district, you know, that would be appropriate. If you have concerns about roof leaks and you need to do, you know, X-ray testing of your roof to determine the wet spots, you know, that is all eligible for building condition survey, and we encourage you to take full advantage of any testing and research you need. It's wintertime, another common concern is, hey, this, you know, the end of the classroom wing is always cold, the heat never gets down there. Well, why is that? Is the system functioning properly? Is it designed properly? Call your architects and engineers in to review the existing conditions, figure out if there's a cause as to why that heat is not working properly, and include that in the priority of your 5-year plan the next time you do that, as soon as you finish the building condition survey.
So Carl,
as far as, yeah.
Just to clarify on this slide, does that mean that school districts will receive their local share of that 29 cents per square foot based on the selected aid ratio?
It does. I apologize. I could have been more clear there. Yes, you will get, you know, if a district's aid ratio is 50%, you would get 50% of up to 29 cents times, you know, 1 million square feet. You would get your aid ratio reimbursement. There is a local cost to it. If you only spent 20 cents, you're not going to get reimbursed at 29 cents. Obviously, you'd get reimbursed at your actual cost, or 29 cents, whichever is lower, multiplied by the square foot, and then multiplied by your reimbursement aid ratio. Okay. So you will get your selected aid before the 10%. You will get high need if you're high need. You generally, not generally, you do not get the 10% incentive for building aid for the building condition survey. Another topic is, yep, sure.
Go back to what you were saying about having all buildings registered and annually inspected. Is it true is it also true for exterior storage buildings which the district owns?
Absolutely. A building is defined as basically four walls and a roof and a lockable door. If it's an open structure like a gazebo, no. If it's an open structure like a baseball dugout, no. If it is an open structure like a baseball dugout, but it happens to have a closed and lockable storage room on the end of it where all the bases are stored and the, you know, the infield rakes and the line machines and so forth, yes, then that becomes a building because it's got that storage room that's lockable on the end of it. What we're trying to prevent, and we have unfortunately lots of stories and lots of examples where kids are kids and they will play games and lock kids in, and then you have an emergency when someone is trapped in a facility that no one knows about. So any building has to be reviewed, provided information to us, reviewed, and then made legal by putting it on our fire safety system so that you can get an annual certificate of occupancy for that building.
All right, thank you.
Power purchase agreements. State Education, NYPA, and NYSERDA worked very closely together to develop standard contracts in order to encourage districts to go solar. It does not cost the district any money. The districts do not own, operate, or maintain the solar equipment. If you are interested, you get a guaranteed energy rate, which will be lower than your current rate, so you will be able to save money and you will be able to predict your energy costs into the future. You do have to have the ability to provide roof space and then obviously access to the vendor to maintain the solar equipment if necessary. But You don't have to own, operate, or maintain. Therefore, there's no capital investment. And of course, there's no building aid because there is no capital money expenditure by the district, and there's no ownership of the equipment. So other districts there are districts going through the NYPA K solar program, or you can go directly on your own to a power purchase through a power purchase agreement to any solar vendor. The key for the K solar program is the three agencies have done a significant amount of legwork, and they already have identified vendors through a public procurement process. And so therefore, for example, a school district in one area could call 2 or 3 solar vendors that have been pre-approved and get competing proposals and simply select the one that best meets their needs and authorize that to proceed, and then enjoy the benefits associated with the lower cost utilities. Again, it was a multi-agency effort to encourage solar, and this is the governor's K Solar. It's part of NY Solar. Yes, NY Solar, to reduce energy throughout the state, and this is the component applicable to school districts. NYPA will come out and make presentations at your district and review your site. Make presentation at the Board of Education meeting if necessary, and then ultimately we've also, NYPA has hired a solar engineering firm that will be used to review and approve all the projects that need building permits from SED. So these will also be streamlined, so they will not impact our backlog. Standard contracts, no voter approval because you're not spending any money. There's no cost. Potential to save energy into the future. And again, we've provided standard contracts which you can use as a starting point and continue to negotiate, or you could use as the final agreement if it was suitable for your needs.
Carl, how long is this program going to be available to school districts? Do we know?
Yes, you'd have to get on it pretty quickly, actually, because if I'm not mistaken, there are federal incentives that make this particularly valuable to the solar vending community, and I think those federal benefits expire in December 31st of 2016. There is still time to do it, but you would have to make some contacts to NYPA as soon as possible to get that stuff moving.
Yeah, great, thanks.
The Americans with Disabilities Act is now 25 years old, and there was a little state recognition of the importance of the program. There's Commissioner Elia right in the middle there, to the left of the sign. And basically, districts have been required to be in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act since 1995. So 20 years later, you know, the sign says 25 years because it was established in 1990, but you were required to be in compliance by 1995. And unfortunately, we still see a significant number of district projects come in without accessibility, and we require those corrections. We have very little sympathy after 25 years that when we've been here offering funding for all of these things, the districts have not taken advantage of it as they should. And in some cases, when concerned citizens have problems with districts' compliance, they go to the Justice Department. And most recently, we had a school district where, unfortunately, the district was not evacuating students during drills or during an actual emergency, and that obviously led to problems in the district. And bottom line is they have entered into a consent decree whereby they agreed to do lots of training for the district employees, develop individual plans for each student that needs one, and allow those students to participate in drills so that they can be prepared and the staff can be prepared to assist those students during the actual emergency. So unfortunately, this is still an issue despite the amount of time and effort that's been spent on ADA compliance over the last 25 years. So let's not see any more districts get caught in a situation like this. I'm sure that it was not looked on favorably by the community. Green Ribbon Schools. This is a recognition program by the federal government that similar to Blue Ribbon, I believe, but green in the fact that you're trying to improve the environmental health and wellness of your community. It's in our 5th cycle now. We ask you to submit applications through the State Education Department, and then we in turn select a state winner or winners, and then send those nominations on to the federal government. We've not ever recommended a school to the feds that was not approved. So we have a number of national green ribbon schools in New York State, and we've improved the program over time. And this is an out-of-date timeline. It says 2016 timeline because they're getting recognized in 2016, but the process started in 2015. So I'll update this slide, but the bottom line is one of the concerns we heard is that it's not an easy application. There's a lot to demonstrate, and therefore districts were concerned about the timeline. So the 16-17 timeline is already open. The application is already open online. You can visit our website, find the information. Roseanne Groff in my office coordinates this, and the winners the most recent winner is Schuylerville. They will be recognized this summer in 2016 on Earth Day in Washington, D.C. And the application process that is already open is for winners that would be announced in the spring of 2017 for an award on Earth Day in summer 2017. There's 3 main pillars in the Green Ribbon Schools program. The first is to reduce environmental impact and cost, and the second is to improve the health and wellness of student staff, and the third is to provide an effective environmental and sustainability education requiring robust environmental education that engages STEM, civic skills, and green pathways. So it covers 3 things, right? We want to reduce our impact in our current operating conditions. We want to improve the health and wellness of students and staff, and we want to provide sustainable and effective education to train the next generation of students to help save our environment. I want to spend just a couple of quick minutes on some national things. If you notice the 2 highlighted bars, highways at the top, $1.1 trillion. But if we look at K-12 and higher education, that's more than the highways, right? So how much money does the federal government spend on highways? Everybody has the interstate highway system, and you get help with roads and bridges and all these good things that we do need. But we're starting to recognize that the federal government has not played a significant role at all in public K-12 and higher ed. And so when we look at the cost of educational facilities, there's literally no federal assistance or regular assistance as we compare to other important federal needs. So we're trying to see if we can have a conversation about that. In New York, we're very similar. Higher ed is 6% at the top 1 o'clock on the chart, and K-12 is 20%, and that is 1% higher than New York spends on highways. So again, we have a match to the feds, but we do obviously spend a significant amount on K-12 and higher ed. But the bottom line is, if there was some federal assistance, then perhaps there wouldn't be nearly the burden on the New York State government structure and local taxpayers for educational facilities as there currently is, obviously, if there were federal monies available to offset some of those costs. Again, interesting for New York, here's the change in federal enrollment, the U.S. enrollment since 1995, significant upward trend, and here is New York. We have started, basically, we started in 1995 and 2011 with identical population levels. A small increase, 5% over those 15 years, and a slight decrease in 2009, and then back to even keel at 0 basically in 2011. So despite the fact that the nation has a massive increase, we have steady. And as a result, you can imagine, again, this is the federal trend. The blue bar is the total U.S. capital outlay, and the yellow is the total U.S. maintenance and operations. Then compare that with New York. The 2 horizontal lines with the dots connected, those are the same bars. I apologize, the colors are different, but those are the yellow line is capital, and the red line is maintenance and operation, and the blue and red bars are New York. So you can see that New York does surpass, but mirror the curve on both capital and maintenance. Interestingly enough, 2001, 2, and 3, you see those really high pink bars. That seems to me like it likely corresponds with a 10% incentive when our work went from $1 billion to $4 billion. And then starting again 2009, 10, that likely corresponds with Excel. So the numbers tell an interesting story. Maintenance, I'm going to keep moving here because we want to finish on time, but again, on the national level, we're looking at what includes operations, what includes maintenance, what includes capital, and then how do we fund it appropriately. So if we run national calculations, again, the current replacement value is $224 a square foot times 8.3 billion square feet of district facilities, and we get almost $2 trillion of current replacement value. If we spent 1% on utilities, 2% on custodial services, routine maintenance and repairs, and so forth, then we're spending about $56 billion a year. If we want to talk about capital, what we need to do to continually keep our capital in good repair, that's another $56 billion. And where are we? What's the capital outlay gap? The capital, we're actually spending $58 billion when we need 56. So we're spending $2 billion more than the 17-year average. Why aren't our facilities in perfect shape then? Well, because it excludes things like deferred maintenance. It excludes new construction for overcrowding, and there's many areas of the nation that have significant overcrowding. And it excludes all the capital programs that we need to provide current state-of-the-art facilities. That $58 billion has just been spent on existing infrastructure. So I think that we are spending significant amounts, but we perhaps are not spending it in the correct way, because on the maintenance and operations side, we've got a $12 billion national gap every year. That's it. Real quickly, don't forget, I started out with that slide that showed the workmen doing some silly things. I myself never thought I'd put myself in this category, but I did something really stupid this past summer and almost cut my thumb off. Thank God I survived that, but here's examples of people who sometimes don't survive. Let's not let our facilities or our maintenance people do anything like these. Here's a painter, 5, 6 stories up. Here's a window washer. I already counted. That's 32 stories up. This is an actual picture from one of your administrative offices. Electrical overload will cause a fire. Here's another painter. That's not at a school, but still kind of a crazy thing to do. And this is the picture that was leading. That's a lot of trust right there. I promise I won't cut too far. And then finally, if it looks silly, it probably is. I really don't think a couple of plastic things are going to prevent a locomotive from severing your fire hose. You might derail a train, although I doubt it, but use common sense, and if it looks wrong, if you see something, say something. And that's about it. So thank you very much for your participation.
And thank you, Carl. That was a really information-filled hour, and you ended with a little humor that makes us reflect on what we're doing. Invite everyone to join us on February 24th for a webinar on how to get paid for using less power. So we're going to